Good afternoon. My name is HB Bockelman. I'm the Executive Director for PROMO, which is Missouri's statewide LGBT advocacy organization. And I want to start first just by addressing some of the questions that came up in the general discussion before this. Representative Cox, your question in regards to whether or not it's a choice and if there's any information out there along those lines. One of the things that is out there is some scientific indication that birth order for men and the number of other siblings in a household will increase the statistical chance that the youngest child will be gay. That study does not replicate with women, but there is some scientific indication that there's an inclination towards being gay. And the other piece is whether there's a choice in being gay or not. I can tell you on my personal stance, I wouldn't necessarily have chosen that. My personal story is that I was en route to be the family priest, and I realized that I was running away from my own sexuality and chose not to go into the priesthood. I am actually very happy with who I am, but it took a long time for me to get to that point. And believe me, it's whenever I look across our community, it's not easy for people to make simply a choice like that. And on the matter of it being a choice, I'd like to just simply address what we're seeing in the legal realm with regards to that. The Supreme Court of California and the Supreme Court in Connecticut both looked at that exact issue of suspect class, what constitutes a suspect class, and whether or not those characteristics are changeable, immutable, as they say. And they threw those arguments out the window because ultimately, not unlike religion in the discussion that we had, whether someone identifies as gay or lesbian and you believe it's a choice or I don't believe it's a choice, that argument is irrelevant because it's a deeply held belief and a life that these people are living and that we are discriminated against at multiple terms. Representative Carlson, in regards to other states and the EEOC, I can tell you that right now there are 21 other states that offer full protections based on sexual orientation. Gender identity is covered in 16 of those states. That lag is simply that gender identity was identified as a necessary separate term to be included in these laws. And the other pieces that I do want to share, actually Representative Elmer is out of the room, but in his reference to the concern about a church and whether or not they need to employ someone who's gay or is against their church affiliation, there is a Supreme Court ruling recently within the last year that affirms that the church has the power to hire those individuals that they believe best meet the characteristics of the church. So that is already protected and certainly is also covered in this bill. But again, I wanted to thank you for taking the time to actually hear this bill because as many of you in this room know, we've been introducing this bill for 13 years now, since 2000. And I believe that the momentum in time is on our side and we do not give up. We will be back with this regardless. What we are seeing is that there's a change in perspective. I know that oftentimes this is a very divided partisan issue, but we are seeing more and more Republicans that understand the issues, whether if we look at basic employment, housing, or public accommodations as this bill does, or whether marriage. For example, in New Hampshire recently, there was an effort to defeat the marriage law in that state, which again, this bill has nothing to do with marriage whatsoever. However, overwhelmingly, that body voted in support of marriage in New Hampshire. That included well over about 120 Republicans that voted in support of that measure. What I find interesting is that recently this body also took up House Bill 1621, Wanda Brown's bill in regards to concealed carry. And I know that several of you debated this on the House floor. One of the things I'd like to point out in regards to that is that we constantly hear on this side of the table your arguments against including sexual orientation or gender identity in the human rights statute as one being you don't want to extend those categories. You believe that the current protections are sufficient. And two, that it's a choice. And this body overwhelmingly, and as I look at the members of this committee, many of which are absent because I think that this has become an uncomfortable conversation for them, they voted to support adding another category, concealed carry permit holders, and it is also a category which is very much a changeable category. So those arguments are irrelevant. I think that what we're ultimately dealing with is a bias and animus towards gay individuals. What I see is a prevalence of lies and myths about who we are as a community. And many of you in this room sit and work side by side with members of the gay and lesbian community. And I ask you to just simply stand on the right side of history and support adding sexual orientation and gender identity as Bill 1500 does.
Any questions of this witness? Thank you for your testimony. Seeing none. Those